As Christians, we must become more demanding about these issues. For instance, we must support decisively the right to equal pay for equal work. Why is it taken for granted that women must earn less than men? No, they have the same rights. The discrepancy is a pure scandal.
This will not be the first time a segment has begun with the words, "The Pope has decided to challenge something that most popes would never consider getting involved in." But this is the man, and this is Pope Francis. He is unafraid and unrepentant, this time taking on the battle between Mother Nature and man, and women and money. Our guest is pastor of Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic Church in Massapequa, New York, regular contributor to network news debates, host of several nationally syndicated TV programs, and in his spare time, he's also an author. He has lots of spare time. He does not. Pleasure to welcome back Monsignor Jim Lisante. Monsignor, thanks for being here today.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Monsignor, is it fair to say, first of all, that there are Catholics around the world right now, very devout Catholics, who sometimes look at what the Pope says and does and they go, "We didn't sign up for this"?
Sure. No, definitely. I think some people would prefer he stick to strictly spiritual topics. The thing is, he sees that politics and the spiritual go hand in hand, that political decisions have an impact on the spiritual as well as the physical effect on mankind. And so I think what he's doing makes great sense, actually. It would be nice to separate them out and say, you know, let him stick to the spiritual topics. He thinks the spiritual topics and real world are deeply interconnected.
Is it not fair to say that here in the 21st century, though, the Catholic Church needs changes? Because, and I have to be very honest with you, I was joking with someone earlier, and I said, well, the Catholic Church in many ways needs to come back into the 18th century, because they are still in many ways backwards. That's how the Western world views it, so it is good to come forward.
It is, and to be contemporary as he is a good thing. Look, the bottom line is the teaching of the Church is very clear. From the moment of conception until the moment of natural death, life is to be treasured and respected. Part of that is, let's take a look at the environment. If we're poisoning ourselves, poisoning our children, putting the wrong thing into our bodies, into our air, that's a concern that has to do with the protection of human life. So, to me, he's perfectly consistent. He's a pro-life pope, but not just pro-life in terms of being against abortion or against the capital punishment, but being for life in its healthiest form. It makes great sense to me. I think he's doing the right thing.
Let's then talk about that. Let's start with climate change. Now, apparently, according to reports, the Pope will release an encyclical. Now, that is one of the letters in which the pontiffs lay out official positions. Is it still your understanding that this encyclical on climate change will come out in June?
I think that's what I've heard, and I think it's going to be very, very good to hear the Holy Father speak about an issue that is a concern. You know, people say, you know, is climate change real or not? Well, there's certainly enough question and enough evidence that we should explore it further. And if, in fact, man-made petroleum is going to exploit the world and cause the world to become less safe for breathing and growing our crops and living in a healthy way, then the Holy Father has an obligation to speak out about it. Again, it's a life issue. So yes, the encyclical will come out. He will challenge especially those of us in the world where we have a lot to think about how much of that energy we're wasting for the sake of our personal comfort. I'm sure for many in the consumerist society, many in the capitalist societies like our own, it's going to make us uncomfortable, because the truth is we use most of the world's resources and we make up a fraction of the world's population.
Well, let's talk about something else that's going to make people uncomfortable. It has already, by the way, Monsignor, because there are a lot of conservatives, and conservatives are right. They are usually very Catholic, very religious, if you will, and there's a lot of conservatives out there running counter-populist campaigns. They want to change what they consider to be the misled pontiff's mind. This seems like you've got a little schism growing here, because you have people who want to follow the Pope, yet they're saying, excuse me, Your Holiness, this is not for you to deal with here. This is a political issue, and you're in the wrong place. You're in over your head here, they'll say.
You know, we can't pick and choose when we have a Pope, because he has an ideology that we like, that now we're going to follow the Pope, and other times we're not. There are certainly issues about which Pope Benedict and individuals would disagree, or Pope John Paul, individuals would disagree. But you try to respect where they're coming from. What I love about Pope Francis is when he speaks about the need for us in consumerist America to be concerned about the poor, he's coming having lived with the poor, having nothing material of his own, a man who lives the gospel he's preaching. And you know, the huge popularity of this Pope around the world indicates to me that there's a hunger out there for people who want someone who's going to live the life that he's calling others to live. You know, let's be very honest. For generations, popes have lived in palaces and lived like kings while telling poor people what to do. This man comes from the poor, lives in a poor fashion, and is one with the poor. So he has a certain credibility that gives him a power, I think, and the right to speak on these issues.
But let's also be very clear and very frank then if we're going to be on another issue here, and that is what some people have said, and I'm reading here from Joseph Bast, who is the president of a group called Heartland, and he says, quote, "Though Pope Francis's heart is surely in the right place, he would do his flock and the world a disservice by putting his moral authority behind the United Nations unscientific agenda on the climate." Monsignor, we've got to be fair here. There's an awful lot of evidence out there that says climate change is not entirely man-made, that a lot of it has to do with Mother Nature. So the Pope in many ways is weighing in here on something which he is being misled by a group of people who believe that it is all man-made.
Well, perhaps that's true or perhaps it's not. We're going to find out. But certainly everyone would agree that man is partly responsible for the pollution around us. And if the Holy Father is saying to us, can we be sensitive to doing what we can? Granted, let's allow it for Mother Nature to take some of the blame. But let's be very honest. When you have a fraction of the world's population in America using most of the world's energy, you've got a problem. When you've got China so consumerist-oriented right now that they are polluting their own people so that they're going through massive health crisis, clearly this is man-made, and men should do something about it. The Holy Father's right on target. Look, I know that people aren't going to agree with any Holy Father when he steps into what is perceived to be a political issue. He would say it's a moral and social issue, and as Pope he has a right and an obligation to speak.
Okay, then, with 2 minutes that we have left here, here's another one of those social issues, because the Pope says it is pure scandal to pay women less than men. But the pontiff himself doesn't even talk about women getting equal pay in the church. That seems to be like there's a little bit of a dichotomy here.
Well, no, that's not true at all. As a matter of fact, at least where I'm coming from, people are paid equally, whether they're men or women, and that's a leadership issue. So whether it's the local bishop who makes that decision or in Rome, the Holy Father, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find that he's paying men more than women in the Vatican. I think we need more women in the Vatican. The reality is that we are a male-dominated society at the Vatican, priests, bishops, popes, and the more women, the better perspective.
I'll be very careful,
so
Monsignor. You're going to open up women in becoming priests here in just a moment, which is something else, and you know that's a Pandora's box here.
You can bring that up.
Okay, but that's what a lot of people still want to bring up here, because they say that if the Pope wants to make women equal here, and again, by the way, do I understand you correctly that it's your understanding, at least, that women are paid the same as men in the Vatican?
What I'm saying is, throughout the church, the decision is made by the local bishop on what to pay people, and there's never discrimination. No one is given a higher salary because they're male in the church. People are given their salaries on the basis of the job they do and their qualifications. When a woman comes in and she's the chancellor of a diocese and she has the degree necessary to take on that job, she's paid what a man would be paid.
So then if the Pope comes out and actually says this and calls it a scandal, then would it be your understanding then that as far as all the church, but from top to bottom, no matter where the diocese is, that they will have to pay women exactly the same as they pay the men for the exact same work? That your understanding?
I think that's what he's calling people to do, and it's a good thing to do. It's fair. Who can be against that? Who can say, you're doing the same job, but you make less pay? It doesn't make any sense. The Pope is calling for fairness. Who can disagree with that, Ed?
No one can disagree with it as long as everybody's getting paid properly. I agree with you, but that's what a lot of people are going to say. Let's make sure that it happens is what they're going to want to see here to make sure that the Pope, in their eyes, is not talking out one side of his mouth. 20 seconds,
well,
I have to...
You know, that's it.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Go ahead, Ed. No, I was just going to say the great thing about this Holy Father is you're not going to call him short on sincerity or authenticity, because the guy's the real deal. He lives as a poor man, and he calls us to be sensitive to the poor. He's calling people to live equally, and he tries to treat everybody equally. He's walking the walk, Ed, and that gives him great moral authority to comment on these issues, which I think as Holy Father he's obligated to do.
He is walking the walk, and I got a feeling we have a lot more footsteps to come with this Pope that we haven't even thought of yet. Monsignor Jim Lisante, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Ed.
All right, take care.
You're great. Thank you.
Did Major League Baseball knee-jerk in closing a game to all the fans in Baltimore? And what about the NFL's tax-exempt status? That and more right here on MidPoint next.